Dinosaur was not that long ago at all. Now, Regan Retzloff, we've got a top 8 in Orlando at regional championships. Of course, we've got a North American International Championship finalist, a senior North American International finalist, a junior North American International champion. So we've got basically someone who was one of the best juniors, became one of the best seniors, and is now proving to be one of the best masters. Doesn't matter what division Regan ends up in, they're just like, yeah, I'm still one of the best, just so we're clear.
Also surrounded himself with the best juniors and seniors as well, and they aged up together. Of course, some of those losses were to Isaiah Bradner, and they have all become testing partners to end up in this spot here. Regan with a fantastic opportunity. Both these players now looking to close out. 3 more matches separate them between a finish in the top 8 and a finish as a champion.
Yeah, we've got a European and a US player. We've got a European and a US caster. Seems like this is just meant to be. And this is going to be one of those things, when you get to this stage of the tournament, it is so harsh because everybody is such a good player. Everybody here has made a great deck choice. Everybody here has proven to be a phenomenal player. And from here, you're basically going to have to win 3 exceptionally difficult games. One good piece of news here, we have extended these games. We've gone from 50-minute best of 3 into 75-minute best of 3. Obviously, we've seen a few games go into time on the stream so far. There's been a few games where we've said, oh, with a little bit more time, if we'd played that out. Well, hopefully here, we've got a bit more time and we can play it out.
Absolutely. This will be a fantastic showing from both these players. Would love to see what hands we end up with to start things off here, as we know that it's also very important for the Lugi player to get off to a nice aggressive start in these matchups. Let's take a look at these prize cards and see 2 ways to bring Pokemon in the gusting in the prize cards there with the boss's orders and the Serena.
Yeah, a couple of gusting options gone. It's not the end of the world. Couple of energy, nothing terrible, but the gusting options could come back in the late game when you're trying to get those last couple prizes. If boss's orders is one of those last prize cards taken, that could be a pain. As Pedro pops the prizes out, the Drapion ends up in the prizes, Snorlax, Sableye, so again, nothing terrible, but there are a few there you probably would rather have.
Yeah, the Snorlax and the Sableye, both going to be one-ofs in this list, so look out for those, and we'll see if we can remember those as we move on into this match. We are underway here in the top 8 of Oceania International Championships.
Yeah, this one is going to be an awful lot of fun here. So, it does look like we've got a Raikou on Pedro's side of the board going against a Luminion on Regan's side of the board. And if we ignore every other Pokemon in the deck, that's looking really good for Pedro.
Yeah, what a start here, you know? And you get an extra card, too. And that's a great way to start things off. We'll see if the rest of the hand has anything to go with it. And this might not be it. I see the capture energy here, but you can't do much else. Maybe even retreat into a Comfey, but a very slow opener here.
Yeah, even going first with these Lost Box decks, what you really want to be doing is getting a few Comfey there, doing some flower selecting. You're not going to get 7 or 8 cards turn 1 if you're in the Lost Zone without using a supporter card, but you certainly can just get a couple of flower selecting, use a couple of those Comfey, give yourself a bit of a card advantage in your hand, get a couple cards in the Lost Zone just to start off. It's not ideal if you're having, a fairly muted start here. It's not the end of the world. It's still only turn 1. Best of 3, 75 minutes, all of that, but it's still not a great start. So Pedro here, just having a look through the deck, figuring out what's there and what's not for the next few turns.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, it looks like that Radiant Greninja is going to be a great choice. A couple of energies in the hand, so just try to draw into some of those options. Really would love to see some cards enter the Lost Zone early on in this matchup, and no help in the hand so far.
No, we do see the Radiant Greninja, which is always good. That one tends to come out nice and early. Concealed cards lets you discard an energy card from your hand, draw 2 cards. Hopefully that then leads to some Comfey from there. You start off with a Greninja, draw some cards with concealed cards. That gets you your Comfey. You start switching between them, you use your flower selecting, and the engine goes from there. And we've seen these Lost Box decks, they can have these really explosive turns where you're drawing card after card, getting a whole bunch of stuff in the Lost Zone. But as it stands at the moment, we're using that concealed cards, and Pedro's going to need to see something kind of good. It is a Battle VIP pass. That is a great card to get turn 1.
Yeah, you don't draw much better than that. Sure enough, has an additional lightning energy, so some draw later on in this game, and potentially we could see an attack from that Raikou V starting to take some early prizes. So really strong to find those 2 cards here. See what else is grabbed now. There is, of course, the potential to find a retreat there. You can go ahead and use that capture energy, retreat to a Comfey, and see if you can chain together some scoop up nets or other switching effects here. Get some cards into the Lost Zone. I feel like if you ended this turn with at least 2, you'd feel pretty comfortable.
Yeah, you are looking pretty nice. I'm having a quick look at Regan's deck list here. I'm not seeing a Dunsparce in that deck list. So this Raikou could actually end up being a pretty good attacker as you go through the game. And especially, you know, going first, we could see Pedro on turn 2 trying to gust up and KO a Lugia V with that Raikou V. And Regan can try and, you know, limit his bench size to limit the damage output of that Raikou, but that's not really what you want to do with Lugia. You want to get a couple of Lugia down. You've already got your Luminion. Obviously, you want to save bench space for the Archeops to come out, but this is going to be an awkward first couple of turns for Regan, because with that Battle VIP pass and with the Raikou in the active, Pedro is starting to work on something here.
Yeah, we'll see what the choice is now. Of course, you could just hold off and leave this Pokemon in the active spot. Think about starting to get aggressive with the prize cards in this situation, not lose that energy, and then you don't have to go and find cards like Mirage Gate or use a card like a Raihan to help out with energy acceleration. So there's definitely some merit to just passing the turn here.
Yeah, as much as I love getting cards in the Lost Zone with Comfey, and I really, really do, I think if you've got a Raikou that needs 2 energy to attack, you've got an energy on, you've got the specific lightning energy in your hand ready to go, and your opponent's got a Luminion in the active, and you know they're going to be benching Lugia, I mean, how great would it be if your opponent only got 1 Lugia down and you were able to get a turn 2 KO? That's the kind of thing that leads to very, very quick wins. Of course, Regan can see that happening as well, so we've got a Lugia down, we've got a Quick Ball already getting an Archeops in the discard, which is huge, and we're going to be looking for, if not now, then certainly in a minute, there's going to be a second Lugia V. You have to here.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a very dangerous spot here. Of course, Pedro would be able to just manipulate his own bench to get enough damage for a knockout here with a Lightning Rondo on a Lugia V. So you're going to have to get down that second Pokemon. This is a weakness that this deck has when you don't have the Dunsparce featured, and sure enough, we are going to see that as an awkward situation now. And Regan is looking at his cards here. 2 big ones to look at. Obviously, you need to have that Lugia V, but that Stoutland V is a great way to take some additional prize cards in this matchup on some Pokemon like that Comfey.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a good bet. We do see that second Lugia coming down here. That is pretty important. For anyone that's wondering, it is 5 bench Pokemon needed between both the players. That is how many Raikou would need in order to go and get the one-hit KO on the Lugia V. And like you said yourself, Pedro could actually just play 5 bench Pokemon himself, but Regan's got a couple down here, so I don't think the bench Pokemon is going to be an issue. Honestly, if Pedro's got some kind of gusting, one of those Lugia's probably going down. And Regan here, there is a Professor's Research in hand. There's not much else, so I think we're going to be seeing that sooner rather than later.
Yep, just considering even getting this energy down here, powerful energy is an important card. And if you do get to hold on to this Luminion V, maybe get that energy back into the deck, you could find it for a Stoutland later on.
Yeah, it's a little play, but it's a big play. That Luminion does go back into the deck when it attacks. So rather than discarding the energy with Professor's Research, leave it on the Luminion. And maybe it doesn't end up back in the deck later on, but maybe it does. Although it looks like it is just going to be used as a pivot option into the Yveltal. And this is Regan's way of basically saying, look, I know you're probably going to take a prize here, so at least take a prize that I don't care so much about. Because sure, Yveltal's really good for KOing big Pokemon like Lugia, V-Star, and Azui and Gudra. Against the Lost Box deck, much less good.
Yeah, there's a lot of Pokemon on Hidden Regan's deck that can knock out Pokemon on Pedro's side, so go ahead and bring up that Yveltal as a sacrificial prize card there. Pedro understanding this, but doesn't really have much play around it. Gusting isn't really the name of the game. It's a lot of escape ropes in this list and just the one boss's orders. But 3 Pokemon V are on the bench, so certainly could see one of those escape ropes eventually come into play.
I was going to say, escape rope would probably get the Luminion, not the Lugia, but it would still get 2 prizes nice and early, so Yeah, escape rope would work quite nicely. There's not much gusting, but escape rope would get a couple cheeky prizes. But you still need to be setting up your deck here. So if we could get a few pivoting options, I mean, certainly you want to see if you can get if you're not gusting, you want to be using your Chorus's Experiment here. That would be huge. We're seeing an Oran Guru again here. We need to start seeing some cards going into the Lost Zone. Going up a couple prizes is great, but you still need to start getting something going on in terms of, you know, just being able to actually start setting up your deck properly. You don't want to take a couple of prizes and then have nothing to actually finish off. There is, however, that one Boss's Orders, the only copy in the deck, is in hand and does bring up the Lugia.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the Chorus's Experiment put onto the top of the deck, and I'm like, well, you better have a supporter there, buddy. And sure enough, he has the best one there, going to be able to target down that Lugia V with the Choice Belt and take that out.
Did actually have another Chorus's Experiment in hand anyway, as it turned out. The issue here is this overextending? Pedro's gone and gotten 2 prizes nice and early and KO'd the Lugia, which is awesome. But there are 0 cards in the Lost Zone after 2 turns. If Regan goes off here with a Lugia and gets a return KO on the Raikou, which is absolutely possible here, has Pedro kind of slowed his setup too much at the expense of getting those early prizes? That is something we're going to have to watch, because by this stage, you know, after 2 turns, a lot of these Lost Zone decks are going to be looking for Mirage Gate to be basically on the board. And I think getting that next turn would be a tall order, especially with Regan playing a Marnie here, sees Pedro's large hand and goes, nah, mate, I ain't having any of that.
Yeah, Pedro was actually holding on to the Raihan. If he had Ordinary Rod and a way to search out that Raikou V after it was potentially knocked out here, would have just been able to bring it right back, regardless of Mirage Gates or any cards in the Lost Zone. And Regan's not going to let that happen. Marnie is going to make quick work of that soon enough.
Yeah, unfortunately, getting rid of that big hand. So where do we go from here? It looks like we've got a Lost Vacuum being eyed up here. No, it's not a Lost Vacuum being eyed up. It's being discarded so that a Quick Ball can be played. It's awkward because both Lost Vacuum and Quick Ball, you've got one card you're playing and another card you're getting rid of in order to play it.
Yeah, I mean, we should just blame Regan for the fact that the Quick Ball isn't the one that's thrown on top.
That's what threw me.
Well, it is going to be the Lugia grabbed, and this is wise. You can go ahead and just put that Pokemon on the bottom of your deck. You already have enough Pokemon on the field here. You want to get those Archeops added to the board. If you can find that Lugia V-Star, and I don't see it yet.
I'm seeing nothing. We've got Speed Lightning Energy, but no Lightning Pokemon to which to attach. It's just a bunch of energy and another Marnie.
And an Archeops. Yeah, that's not how we drew it up.
It really isn't. Is there any chance there's an Aurora Energy there, which would at least allow you to discard the Archeops? Oh my goodness, it looks like Regan is actually going to concede game 1 super quickly here. And Pedro is going to take a very quick 1-game-to-0 lead, and it turns out going aggressive with the Raikou, definitely the right choice.
Well, if on your bingo card you had Pedro winning with 0 cards in the Lost Zone, you congratulations, because I did not.
No, and actually I didn't even think about that. A Lost Zone deck winning a game without getting a single card in the Lost Zone is not how we draw it up. But this is what I've said this several times this weekend, right? The good players know how to adapt. They know how to be able to look at their opponent's board and their opponent's hand, you know, number of cards and all of that, and go, right, I know I don't usually go turbo aggressive Raikou, but actually I think this is the game where it's going to work.
Yeah, I mean, that was a dangerous spot for Pedro. If we saw the Lugia V-Star come down there, it could be a knockout on the Raikou V, and you're sitting there with a Comfey, 0 cards in the Lost Zone, and you have to make your way all the way back against this huge Lugia V-Star Pokemon. That could knock out anything on your board for the next few turns, and we don't even know what was in his hand after the Marnie. He just lost a hand that was like 12 cards, and has to work with just 5 cards there for potentially the rest of the game. So big turnover here, and sure enough, Pedro is going to love that as he moves into this game number 2 up a game.
Yeah, there was a there is definitely a parallel world there where that backfired royally, and Regan is moving on as a game 1 winner. And it's a lot of it. You are just making calculated guesses. You are thinking about what your opponent's likely to have, and you're kind of hoping your opponent doesn't draw brilliantly, and you're hoping that they just don't have what they need so that you can take advantage. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But Pedro's been here before, already won Warsaw Regionals near the end of last year. I think it was November that tournament was held, and went and took that one down. So we're not just talking about a player who's had a couple of very big finishes, in the past few years. We're talking about a player who is still absolutely on the top of their game.
Yeah, an absolute powerhouse in Pokemon, and sure enough has been doing it for many, many years. I'm sure Regan would love to be right there, and honestly has done that in the younger divisions. Now just needs to do it on the larger stage, and he's going to have to do it without 4 of his energies.
Yeah, a lot of energy in the prizes for both players. 2 capture energy for Pedro, plus an escape rope, ordinary rod, Comfey. Nothing too terrible outside of that. But if we see players with some energy this game, this might be the reason. So it looks like Regan is starting off with a Lugia, and is that a capture energy?
Once again, it's that powerful colorless. It's creeping on us once more. But yeah, we do see there is the Oranguru to go along with this. And I think Regan's contemplating not playing it because he knows about all the escape ropes that are played in this deck. We'll see if that really matters here at this stage. I don't think your opponent's going to go 7 cards in the lost zone, but maybe just be safe at this point.
No, I do. I like putting it down here. I like being able to see an extra card, but Regan goes, no, it's not worth the risk, not with all your escape rope. And Pedro's got 2 Battle VIP Pass in hand turn 1.
This might actually be the kind of hand that could do it. Double Battle VIP Pass, double Scoop Up Net, and the Air Balloon, and a Quick Ball.
And a Lightning Energy.
What? If this wasn't a Oranguru in the active spot, I think this is the best hand you could give yourself to start things off if you find a Colress's Experiment.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a Comfey in the active and one of your Comfey gets your Colress's Experiment, this is about the best possible start we can have here. We had a quick game 1. I still think it's going to be an uphill battle. There is a possibility for Pedro to win this turn. I think it's more likely that Pedro is just going to get a very good setup, bunch of cards in the lost zone, and we saw how well that Raikou went last game. One thing that's interesting, though, because that game 1 was so quick, Pedro may not know that Regan's not playing a Dunsparce. And if you know your opponent's not playing Dunsparce, and you know weaknesses on the board all game, that Raikou is going to be one of your best friends.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is going to be a crucial point here. I'm not sure if we would see it grabbed off of the second Battle VIP Pass, but maybe it would be something found later on here, especially if you start to get more of those cards into the lost zone. You can really start to target that as an early attacker and potential game winner here if everything works out perfectly.
Yeah, I think it's one of those situations where you don't get it nice and early, but you think about it, and if you start getting a few cards in the lost zone and then a quick ball comes your way off a Comfey, that's when you start going, okay, maybe it might be time for the Raikou. And it's something we've talked about in a bunch of games. We saw it with Sam Chen in the previous round, just going, well, I've got an opportunity for this big early, turn 1 KO, but I don't want to get it at the expense of my setup. So it's really just making that decision of when you put your foot on the gas and when you just kind of pull it back a little bit and just go for your regular setup. But we do have an energy being discarded here. Of course, you need one of those for the Greninja to draw 2 cards. That's a big advantage.
Yep, into another Battle VIP Pass. So all of the Pokemon available here for Pedro now. I don't even think you need that many, as we also saw the Quick Ball already, but why not?
I mean, it's looking pretty good. Yeah, but if nothing else, it's still just a good target to discard with Quick Ball if you really want to. So it's just a little bit, yeah, you are going to fill your bench whatever you want. What have you seen, Kyle?
Well, Pedro went ahead and put the Battle VIP Pass onto the top of the deck so that he could throw it away with Flower Selecting and ends up drawing into another Battle VIP Pass.
Oh, that is quite impressive. So we do finally see a Comfey there in the active, and now we start seeing the Flower Selecting working, and it's another Battle VIP Pass.
Yep, this is the one that he put back with the Oranguru, and sure enough, I think we might see the Oranguru once more to put another one of those Battle VIP Passes back. You don't need this many Pokemon. He's still holding on to 2 in hand.
Oh, this is looking very, very nice here. You're just going to be able to get a bunch of cards in the lost zone, and then Pedro's going very different. The way this game is rolling, very different to what we saw in game 1, but it seems to be just as effective on the outset here. So, yeah, this is just looking like an excellent start from Pedro. And if you're Regan, you lost game 1 in far from ideal circumstances. you didn't have a great start in game 2, and then you see what's happening with your opponent, and this is where, you know, you need to essentially calm it down and just go, right, I'm still in this, I'm a great player, I've got a great record, but there has got to be that, you know, there's that niggle of just, is this just not going to be my set here?
Well, when you see the 3rd and potential 4th battle VIP pass from your opponent on turn 1, you start to understand whose tournament it's going to be. But I do love this from Pedro. He's going to go ahead and grab that Cramorant. So kind of hedging the bet there, understanding that going for this huge opener is very aggressive. You need to see a lot of the perfect cards to close out in this opening. So have that backup option of the Cramorant to get some chip damage onto the Lugia V.
And I think that's probably going to be the turn 1 play here. And that Lugia, you know, the Cramorant on the Lugia is a play we've seen time and again, and it's a great play. Because you deal 110 damage, and either they don't evolve it into the V-Star, and you can just KO it with a Cramorant, and that is so good when you can pull that off. Or they do evolve it into the V-Star, but that V-Star has already taken a whole bunch of damage, and is way easier to KO.
Absolutely.
Either way, that chip damage becomes, and 110, for chip damage is pretty tasty.
Yeah, and especially when you find the Zamazenta off of the flower selecting, because that lines up pretty darn well, as Lugia V-Star would definitely walk right into that trap.
Now we do see the quick ball coming down here. We got a whole mess of cards in the hand, and it does look like it is going to be thrown away with the quick ball. It's always nice when, you know, when you say, oh, I could do this, and then a couple minutes later he does it, and you're like, yeah, we're on the same page. I like this.
Yep, this is definitely an interesting game here, but yeah, this is perfect. Gonna go ahead, use the Lumineon V, thinking of every single bench space there, trying to maximize all of this, holding on to the Oranguru too, just even considering maybe this could turn into the perfect spot of an additional Comfey and maybe that Raikou V, but we'll see what the Colress's Experiment has in store for us.
Yeah, we've got 2 cards in the Lost Zone here. The good news is Colress's Experiment will put it up to 4 cards in the Lost Zone. That is going to activate Cramorant's ability, which then lets you attack for free, doing 110 damage. Now we did, and see that's the difference. Oh, accidentally drew 6, put 1 back, because you haven't seen any cards here, so nothing bad has happened. And that's why you see these experienced players, they like to draw these cards in Colress's Experiment face down or similar kind of cards, so that if you do take the wrong number, no harm, no foul, we're all good.
Yep, a lot of players used to fan draw, and that's just the action of just drawing a clump of cards and hoping that it was the right amount. And yeah, we don't do that anymore, and we can take that extra second and make sure that we don't make any silly mistakes.
Yeah, we've moved past that. That was in a simpler time of the Pokemon trading card game. So now there are 3 cards going into the hand, 2 going into the Lost Zone. And the question for Pedro here is, am I going to just do my little bit of a setup and then attack with Cramorant? Can I push that little bit further here? But, you know, in the same way I said for Regan, this has got to be an uncomfortable situation where you're a game down, you've not had a great turn, and your opponent is absolutely rolling. Pedro's in the opposite situation here. There's no real impetus for Pedro to have to push this and really extend to try and get an early win here. Pedro is a game up with a great setup, and at this stage, Pedro can just kind of do his thing and chill a little bit and go, and you know what, I feel really in control of this game.
Yeah, this is a very calm approach here. We saw the scoop up net thrown away into the Lost Zone off of that Colress's Experiment, so you know that he's going to end up going with this Cramorant play now. And sure enough, this lines up fantastically. The Air Balloon on the Comfey, you have the Colress's Experiment waiting on the top of your deck now because of the Oranguru, and is holding the Mirage Gate. So everything available here for Pedro, even going to think of all the possibilities playing down the Manaphy if potentially Regan were able to get the amazing rare Raikou out.
Yeah, and this is working absolutely beautifully here. And of course, next turn you play the Colress's Experiment, you do a single flower selecting, that's 7 cards in the Lost Zone. That is going to activate that Mirage Gate. So back over to Regan here, and we're going to need to see a big turn. We didn't see a big turn last game, we didn't see a big turn 1, but now supporters and everything else are on the board, and Regan needs to have a big turn here. We need to get a couple of Archeops in the discard pile. We need to get a Lugia V-Star, of course, and then start building up from there. And there are a lot of tricks in Regan's deck. There's a lot of interesting Pokemon. There is that Stoutland V, which can take extra prizes off a Comfey, which would be a very nice option to go through at some point during the game. We just need to start seeing those attackers coming out and taking some prizes.
Well, it looks like we do have a little bit of an update from the field. In the top 8, looks like Grant Shen has won the opening game against Owen Cameron, so they will be moving on into game number 2 now.
Yeah, that is the first seed, Owen Cameron, 1 game down, far from over, of course. Everyone's working on the same clock. And actually, it's interesting to note that we haven't even hit the 50-minute mark, which is essentially how long we would generally have had, you know, back in Swiss. So all we've done here is use the extra time for Top Cut. We've not even got into the normal 50 minutes here, so plenty of time. We are not being rushed in these Top Cut matches, and I love it. So we do now. This is Lost Vacuum being played, getting rid of Ace Arena, getting rid of the air balloon on the Comfey, that pivoting option which can allow you to use flower selecting so easily. Just it's a nice little play from Regan to slow down and frustrate Pedro a little bit here.
Yeah, and I mean, the only other thing that goes along with that is you just added another card to your opponent's loss zone, but sure enough, that Comfey would have likely gotten it in there anyways, so it will be a pretty easy 7 that Pedro will be able to reach next turn with that Chorus's Experiment. Regan looking to add a little more to his board, does find a lot of searching options here, definitely will have access to the full summoning star of both Archeops this turn.
Yeah, we've got Evolution Incense, we've got that Ultra Ball, and it's a great combo. You Evolution Incense to the Archeops, then you use the Ultra Ball to discard the Archeops while searching out the Lugia. We've seen players do this a bunch of times. It's a play they've all made many, many times before, and you just want to get the Archeops in the discard pile, get your Lugia out, and off you go. Lugia's a very good deck. I know we've said this a lot, and I know it seems very simplistic at this stage, but you know, even after such a good start from Pedro, Regan is still playing this very powerful Lugia deck, and we see there the double Archeops discard with the Ultra Ball. It's going to clearly be going for the Lugia V-Star, and now Regan's deck is doing its thing, and Pedro might have got some damage on the board, but is yet to take any prizes.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that's awkward about the rest of this turn is that both powerful energies are on the Lugia V now. Often you can see those used in combination with Stoutland V to help it with the assistance of getting some of those additional prizes. And even working towards some of those numbers. Maybe you need to knock out a Luminion V or something later on, and you only have access to a Pokemon like that Archeops to get some additional damage. So losing those early on here, or at least committing them to a Pokemon that doesn't really need the extra damage, was a little bit unfortunate.
Yeah, it's not ideal, but it doesn't always work out perfectly for everything. At least we do still get the couple of Archeops down, and now we are starting to see those abilities coming in. The Primal Turbos lets you go for any 2 special energy from your deck and attach it to your Pokemon in any way you like. It's kind of it's a ridiculous ability.
Yes.
But it's on a stage 2, not just a stage 2, a stage 2 fossil Pokemon, one of the hardest Pokemon in the entire game to get out onto the field. Until Lugia came along with that summoning star, and all of a sudden it's not one of the hardest Pokemon to come out, and it really is a combo of Lugia and Archeops, which, you know, since the set dropped in November, has just absolutely taken at least the competitive side of the Pokemon TCG by storm.
Look at this. It looks like Regan is going to be focused on the Lugia Vs, and that's kind of surprising, as we know that obviously there's no Dunsparce, so really just asking for Pedro to go into this Raikou V, and maybe just going to put Pedro on the clock. Says, I understand that you don't have a Pokemon like that Ditto to bring back the Raikou V. You're going to have the Ordinary Rod and the right combination of cards to bring it back and have an answer immediately to a second Lugia.
Yeah, I like that, and it's like as we keep saying, a lot of this is just calculated risk. Maybe you go full Lugia and Pedro is just able to stream Raikou and it goes very, very wrong. Or maybe the aggressive Lugia just does not give Pedro the time to stream these Raikou, and all of a sudden you can just rush to win, because Lugia still does a lot of damage on its own. It is a good attacker just on its own. It doesn't always need all these other fancy Pokemon. And sometimes all you need is a couple of Lugia V-Star doing a bunch of damage, and you will end up with the victory. But we do see Chorus's Experiment, and that is going to put the magic 7th card into the Lost Zone.
Well, it probably involves energy cards here, as 4 were found off of the Chorus's Experiment. That is not what you want to do on the turn where you're looking to use Mirage Gate.
No.
Yeah, that is tough here. Just looking at the list to see the energy typing. We do have 3 waters that are featured in this list: 2 lightning, 2 psychic, and 3 metal energy.
And it is worth noting, of course, that cards like Mirage Gate, they get cards from your deck, which is brilliant, because you don't have to get them in the discard or get them in your hand. You just pull them straight out the deck. But if they end up in your hand, then all of a sudden you can't search them with something like Mirage Gate. And there are times where you actually aren't able to use Mirage Gate because you just don't have the cards in the deck. They're in your hand, and that's not good enough.
Pedro's going to be looking for a little more help here off of the flower selecting. Tons of energies already into this hand now, but not really exactly what you need to attack with that Zamazenta potentially as a follow-up.
Yeah, we like that Zamazenta. It's very good. That Lost Zone's getting a little bit big. We're sorting it out there. It was about to start taking over the field, and we can't have that. We need to poke them. They need a little bit of space to work here.
I mean, can we take a note of how aesthetically pleasing this side of the field is from Pedro? Look at the discard pile, and everything is nice and neat and organized. This is how we play Pokemon, kids.
Yeah, it looks absolutely beautiful. We've even got the energy in the discard pile turned sideways to differentiate themselves. It's just very nice and neat here. That's someone who's been playing the game for a long time. That's a lot of respect for the game. Now, where we are with Pedro at the moment here is essentially we're looking to finish off that Lugia. Now, the Cramorant's been KO'd, and it does look like it is going to be the Zamazenta you suggested there. The Raikou would have done it, and the Raikou is actually in Pedro's hand. That Raikou is absolutely available, but I think there's a case of, well, I don't want to just keep reusing the Raikou, and the Raikou can be used to KO a fresh Lugia V-Star. So maybe here, use a Zamazenta, KO the damaged Lugia V-Star, save the Raikou for a situation where it has to be the Raikou.
Yeah, we will see those energies go down onto the Zamazenta, and it is such a great Pokemon to use here. Of course, single prize Pokemon that you're going to be able to use, and to get a big knockout here, and it really puts Regan in an awkward spot where he's not really dealing with a Pokemon that deals a ton of damage if he goes for the prize race and starts working on Pokemon like that Lumineon V that are pretty tempting as they would give up those 2 prize cards.
Yeah, it does 220 damage as long as you had a Pokemon KO during the previous turn. So it's one of those where you kind of want to get rid of it because it's really annoying, but you really want to go after stuff like the Lumineon that gives up 2 prizes, or the Radiant Greninja, which is, working there as a draw engine. But every time you do that, you're letting Zamazenta hit for 220. So you've got to go after the Zamazenta, but then you're leaving all these other annoying Pokemon on the field. And that's basically where Pedro is. He's just saying, look, I'm going to give you an almost impossible choice here. No matter what you do, it is probably going to be the wrong choice. As we see a Training Court hit the field, grabbing a Metal Energy out of the discard, and that Zamazenta is now fully powered up. Comfy goes to the bench with that switch cart, and Zamazenta's getting ready to take 2 prizes.
Yeah, that Training Court is such a great card in this list. We usually see Pedro hold on to that for the middle stages of the game potentially, but has to use it early here, and what a great spot to use it in. Going to go ahead and take these 2 prize cards here on the Lugia V-Star. Put a lot of pressure back on Regan's side, and it's tough to say that Regan's going to find a way out of this one, but if he's going to, it's got to be soon, because there's a lot of threats over here on Pedro's side.
Absolutely. Now, we do have our first player booking their place in top 4. Already has beaten Raz 2-1 with a turn 1 Reggie attack to Donk in that top 8 game. Wow. So we have had our first one, our first player booking their space into top 4, and it looks like Brennan and Grant Shen are going into game 3. Back over here, Regan does have a new Lugia V-Star, and you kind of have to take out the Zamazenta, like I said, even though you don't really want to.
Yeah, it's just going to continue to be a threat if you ignore it. So at some point, you are going to have to stand up to the bully in the room and take it out. The problem is you might just walk right into a Raikou V. And if Lugia is the attacker here, that is a big problem.
Yeah, that is not an ideal situation. Now, we do see Archeops coming out, accelerating some. Just a question there. What was the incense used for? Oh, the Lugia. That's fine. So now we get the Primal Turbo getting a double Turbo Energy, and we see another Archeops getting a Capture Energy onto itself. And it seems like that's enough for now. We've got the energy on the Lugia, we've got an energy on the Archeops, and we're just content for the moment to go, yeah, you know what? That'll do for now.
Yep, also worth mentioning, Azul won his opening game over Yerko Valencia as well. So you can add that to the list, see if Azul can potentially close that out and make it to the top 4.
Absolutely, and we should say we are going to be streaming both the top 4 games, so there's going to be no updates during the top 4. We are going to be streaming both of those games. Top 8 this is the last round where we're not going to be able to show you every game. So, we are here with Regan. We do see a Marnie coming down, and once again, Pedro's got a very large handful of cards that are going to have to go on the bottom of the deck. He's going to be given a new 4-card hand, and now the question is going to be whether Pedro can keep streaming. It looks like Regan's going Lugia here, and there is a possibility for Pedro on his turn to go for that Raikou V, and if Pedro gets to KO with Raikou V, that is going to make this a very difficult game for Regan.
Yeah, this was excellent from Regan here. Just understanding that anytime that you're going to take that knockout, you need to disrupt the hand. Walking right into a Raihan potentially would be so dangerous. Going to end up putting a lot of those basic energies back on the bottom of the deck, so maybe Pedro has access to more cards with that Mirage Gate later on, but very nice here for the Lugia to remove his Pokemon and the training court as well.
Yeah, the stadium always gets bumped when Lugia does attack, so Regan there doing everything he can to, even this game up at 2 prizes apiece. And we're seeing some very good play here from both players. Regan identified that Zamazenta did have to be the one to go, getting rid of that stadium. We've not gone for other attackers here because right now the Lugia is doing all the work. We do have a Raihan actually in hand for Pedro, but I'm not seeing any way yet.
Yeah, this is a big Radiant Greninja draw here.
Do we have it's a Hisuian Heavy Ball, but I didn't see a way to get the Raikou there.
Yep, unless it's hanging out in the prizes.
It's Colress's
we do see that Colress's Experiment that does take the Raihan off the table, but of course, you could just draw into the Raikou V along with the Mirage Gate. You have enough cards in the Lost Zone.
That would absolutely do it. You've got enough cards to activate that Mirage Gate. Instead, we're going to see the Hisuian Heavy Ball. There are no targets, so you're not going to be going and getting a basic Pokemon. There are no basic Pokemon. So just kind of having a look. What are my prizes here? Of course, they get shuffled. They are going to be randomized again. But now Pedro knows with absolute certainty which cards are in the prizes. Didn't really get a benefit out of that outside of the knowledge. But at least, if nothing else, it's one fewer card clogging up the hand.
Yeah, and it was pretty solid knowledge as well. That Metal Energy could come into play again. That Ordinary Rod especially is going to be a great card to find when you're drawing some prizes here. And we have not seen the Comfey yet. Maybe that'd be played first, but looks like he likes the odds of using the Colress's Experiment first and then seeing if he can find that last piece with the Flower Selecting.
So we're looking for Raikou. We've got Mirage Gate, but there's no Raikou. There's no way to find the Raikou either. We've got a Cramorant. We've got an Escape Rope. We've got a Scoop Up Net. Looks like we've got a Boss's Orders. We've got a Cramorant. We don't have, unfortunately, the Raikou here. And that is what you're really looking for at this stage. That is the attacker that's really going to be able to deal with this Lugia quickly. You can 2-hit KO. You can go for Cramorant this turn, Snorlax next turn, something like that. But if you want to get rid of it now, it's got to be the Raikou.
Yep. Pedro just going to take in all the knowledge here, looking at every card. Loves to have access to that when he's looking around, see every card that's in the Lost Zone, every card in the discard pile, understand where all of his resources are, and he still has an opportunity here. Flower Selecting could help out a lot, and if this doesn't find it, which it doesn't yet...
Snorlax and an Escape Rope, they are not the cards we're looking for.
Yep, you still have access to that Oranguru to help out, look at one final card potentially, if you're not able to work in an additional Flower Selecting with that Scoop Up Net.
I think that's the only way to go here. The problem with Scoop Up Net is you've got to get the Comfey. If you've got a Comfey on the bench, that's fine. If you've only got one in the active, it becomes far too awkward here. So I think you're kind of, yeah, I'm not seeing a route to the Raikou as it is at the moment. I mean, you could just go Cramorant and poke for 110. Not really what you're looking for, but that would be an option. I don't think Pedro's going to get the attack he really wants this turn.
Yeah, we'll see if a Oranguru could potentially help out, or using the Ordinary Rod first here. Maybe one of these Pokemon are a card that he would like to see first.
And there are 2 in the deck, the Ordinary Rod, so it's not necessarily the only one. There could be another one coming out later. So when you are playing a couple, it's much easier to use it as an early game option. But you're right, you're still not getting the perfect cards back. Yeah, I suppose you are getting the Cramorant, but it's still not. It's awkward because you can see what Pedro's doing. He's working to his outs and he's going with what he's got. But clearly there is something better that Pedro wants to be doing that's just not an option right now.
Right, and I think the Oranguru now is being held just to place the Raihan on the top of the deck now, to have that option in case his opponent does play a Marnie in combination with a knockout again. The problem is you don't really get a good attack off this turn, and that feels pretty bad, especially when this Lugia V-Star just continues to go unchecked.
Yeah, and that is the problem. The Lugia V-Star is doing so much damage, got a base 220, gets rid of stadiums at the same time, and it just kind of runs through decks.
Well, wants to go for the extra card.
Oh, is it going to work?
Colress's experiment.
No, not after you've already played a supporter card this turn. That is not on board, I'm afraid. That is not something you're able to actually do. So you got to hold it in your hand for next turn. And then, I mean, could we go Snorlax here?
Well, if there was an energy found, and I think that's what Oranguru was looking for there, it's just the one Mirage Gate right now, so
yep.
Would not be able to find that. Of course, there is the escape rope in combination with the scoop up net. You could be able to use the Snorlax and maybe knock out one of the Pokemon on the bench, but that's not really the prize card you're after. You'd maybe want to do some of the damage to Lugia, but now that I'm talking about it, maybe just take the prize card and try to work in that Raihan on the Raikou later on.
Yeah, when you've got an option to get a one-hit KO on the Lugia V-Star, the chip damage is an awful lot less important. Because the Raikou exists and is sitting there, you know there is a chance. You take a little prize on the bench, then you go after the Lugia with a Raikou, and then it's just a single prize KO, and that is the game at that stage. Sometimes some decks, because they just don't have an answer to get a one-hit KO on someone like a Lugia, they have to do the two-hit KO, they have to get the chip damage in. That's not the case here. It seems like we don't yet have enough energy on the Snorlax to attack. So it looks like we're picking up the Oranguru with the scoop up there and then playing it back down to use it again.
All right, yeah, this is about putting that Colress's experiment on the top and hoping maybe to see an energy. It's a Mirage Gate.
That'll do.
You don't get to keep that card on the top, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that works, and you've absolutely called it with the escape rope. You do see Pedro here just going for that single prize, playing the escape rope. Regan is going to have to give up the Oranguru here. I don't think you give up either of the Archeops because they're too good for getting those attackers rolling. So you give up the Oranguru, which we've seen both players take great advantage of both games here so far. And then you got the Mirage Gate to guarantee the energy onto the Snorlax. And this is, it's not the perfect turn, but it's pretty good nonetheless.
Yeah, we're not going to complain here. This is going to be the third Mirage Gate, I believe, played. So mainly just leaves that Raihan or that final Mirage Gate to help out with the Raikou V on this Lugia V-Star eventually. But for now, looking at this single prize card here on the Oranguru, and that is going to be a very nice one here. Gets Pedro one step closer, and there's a lot of good resources in those prize cards, as we saw earlier.
Yeah, you're going to be able to get some of those out. And, you know, Regan here is just sitting there thinking, right, well, Snorlax might be beefy compared to most single prize Pokemon, but not when you're staring down a Lugia. Lugia can still take out the Snorlax, and I think you said it quite nicely a minute ago. We are running out of energy acceleration for Pedro. Finding those two Mirage Gate this turn, that was very exciting. That was lovely. But there's only so many Mirage Gate in your deck. There's 4. That's your maximum. Then you've got your one Raihan, but that's a bit awkward. You can only use it after a KO, etc. So we are now in a situation where Pedro's going to be going, free prizes up, taking free prizes, which is lovely, but potentially running out of steam a little bit as we go through. There's no Radiant Charizard that we see in some lists as a nice single energy attacker. So we could end up being stuck with like Sableye Cramorant for a couple of turns if we're not careful here.
Yeah, there's only one more basic energy in the deck right now, so some help out of the prize cards would have been nice. And no, it's not that Ordinary Rod or the basic water.
He missed them both, almost took the energy, took the other one instead. And I'm starting to get slightly concerned about Pedro's resources here and how much he's actually got to go through the rest of this game.
Yeah, the Raihan's going to be helpful for finding the right energy at the right time, but you also need to have the energy for turn in hand, and I believe it's just the capture in hand right now, but maybe one other capture in the deck right now.
It is not what you're looking for, and if this Snorlax goes down, and you've got to imagine it will, attacking is going to become kind of awkward for Pedro here. So Regan, weathered that early storm. Pedro's first turn was an absolutely amazing turn. and it seemed like Pedro was setting up to take a 2-0 victory here, but Regan's, you know, kept it nice and calm, played a Lugia V-Star, took a couple of prizes, it went down, but now we got another Lugia V-Star that's just going to be ticking along here quite nicely. We've already got enough energy on there to get the attack, and there's nothing on Pedro's side of the board that can take a hit from Lugia at this stage.
Yep. Regan, I guess he's got a decision to make here now with the powerful energies that he has. He could use this Archeops to just use Speedwing, take a knockout here with 2 powerful energies, but then you're not really making the most use out of that Stoutland V. So off this quick ball definitely has a lot to consider.
I mean, if I'm playing a deck with Stoutland, I want to be getting maximum Stoutland effort. I'm not going to want to use that powerful colorless energy on any other Pokemon unless I really have to, because especially when I'm playing against a deck that's got a bunch of 80 or less HP Pokemon like those Comfey, you can just get extra prizes so cheekily by attacking with Stoutland, and when your opponent's not benching 2 prize Pokemon, getting 2 prizes off a small 1 prize Pokemon is just as good.
I think this was the game where we had the 2 powerfuls lost early on, so it might not have too many for the Stoutland, but honestly, the hit points of this Pokemon are something to be worried about here if you're Pedro, so could see this Pokemon even just used for Wild Tackle at some point.
I mean, 200 damage is not to be sniffed at. You got 210 HP, decent amount of damage, decent amount of hit points. So yeah, I could absolutely see that. We've seen Stoutland using both attacks during this tournament so far, and Stoutland is going to hit the bench here, and then we're going to see Archeops start to accelerate energy, and I'll tell you, Kyle, Lugia's got enough energy. I think it's going on Stoutland.
Well, we'll see what the choice is here. Certainly could see either the Stoutland or the Archeops attacking the situation, and yeah, it's going to be that Stoutland V here, being the beneficiary of that powerful energy now.
Yeah, we got powerful and an Aurora, then we got another powerful, so that's 80, which is absolutely the key number here. Double Dip Fangs will be doing 80, that will get a KO on a Luminion or on a Manaphy for that matter as well. So there are a couple of targets here, and I kind of want to take out the Snorlax though, because Snorlax with a Choice Belt can respond onto the Stoutland.
I think Regan hinted at this looking through the deck earlier. He was looking at that Raikou and making sure that it was in the deck. This could be a target on the Manaphy right now. Remove that Pokemon with the Stoutland V, take 2 prize cards, and then maybe you can use some play there to get a double knockout onto 2 Pokemon with the Raikou.
Yeah, that is always an option.
But no, that's not going to be the play here. Going to go after the energy and the draw of that Comfey here.
And yeah, I like it. I like going after the Comfey here. I do. Because that's kind of how you get back into the game. So using this, dealing 80, taking an extra prize, and then Regan's going down to 2 prizes remaining. And this game might not be lasted too much longer.
Yep, wasn't worth the risk there. A lot of those special energies already used. See the Aurora on the Stoutland V, the Speed Lightning on the Lugia, so don't want to go for that route instead. Trust in the hit points. They've got you this far. Regan down to just 2 prize cards remaining. Pedro looking at his resources, trying to make this work. Has the capture energy, has the boss's orders, and the Raihan. Just doesn't even know which Pokemon to bring into the active spot in this situation. It's so tough.
No, I mean, if you can find a choice bout, I like Snorlax here to go and get the KO, although I'm looking at the list here. There's no choice bout in the list. And with no choice bout on the list, and there's no Charizard in the list.
Yeah, it's Radiant Greninja.
Yeah, so I don't know what Pedro's got the KO Stoutland here. Because they would be, in decks like this, they would be 2 of the options I'd be looking for. Radiant Charizard or Snorlax with a choice belt. But with neither of those cards in the deck, I mean, you can do it with a Raikou. If there's enough bench spots, which there definitely are, you will be able to do that. But
yeah, I think the play then ends up just being you can use boss's orders, potentially take out the Luminion, and you hope that your opponent just doesn't have access to bring up that Luminion V on your side of the field. But that just doesn't feel like a winning line here because your opponent still has access to another Luminion V and has plenty of cards in hand.
But I think that's got to be the play. I think you need to be using I mean, it's basically Snorlax on Luminion, and it is Raikou on Stoutland or Lugia. Those are essentially where your KOs are coming here. Or you just take a single prize KO with Snorlax and leave Raikou for the 2-prizer to end the game, or the other way round. There are a bunch of ways here, but you kind of want to get rid of that Stoutland sooner rather than later. And if you're getting rid of the Stoutland, it's got to be with Raikou.
Oh, it looks like the Raihan is going to be the play here onto the Raikou V, and then can grab one card from the deck. Could grab the last Mirage Gate for the last energy. Or is there a different option that's a little better?
Now we do have another update. Owen Kammerman has gone and booked their place into the top 4, beating Grant Chen in the top 8 of the Oceania Internationals. So we have seen Raul Reddy and Owen Kammerman book their places in top 8, which means we've only got 2 more spaces left. One of them is going to be taken with Pedro and Regan, and we are getting down to the business end of this game. It is a Sky Seal Stone here, which could be a very, very interesting card, because of course that's the one whereby if you take out a V-Star, you take an extra prize. And that would be enough for Pedro to win the game.
That's right, but I don't think this is going to last, as we see the boss's orders searched out from the Luminion, and that is going to be a quick game number 2 now. Well, I shouldn't say quick, but we're going to be moving on to game 3 pretty quickly. What a way to close things out here. And I mean, that game looked like it was all Pedro for a long time, but the resources really got to him. I think it was that turn with the Colress's experiment finding 4 energies where we really started to see there's not going to be enough gas.
And Regan there, you know, really showing that metal that got him all the way through the juniors division as one of the best players, and the seniors division as one of the best players, into one of the best players in the masters division, because that was a rough game 1. It was a rough couple of first turns, and just held on there and ended up winning. So to confirm where we are in terms of the top 8 then, Owen Kammerman has booked their spot into the top 4. Raul Reddy has booked their spot into the top 4. We are 1-1 between Pedro, Eugenio Torres and Regan Retzloff. And in the final game, we've got Azul and Yerko. And I believe Azul is 1 game up at the moment. So Azul Garcia Griego, 1 game up on Yerko Valencia in the other top 8 game.
Well, then let's go ahead and talk about it. Lugia V-Star hasn't been winning.
Has it not been winning?
Owen Kammerman on the Mew VMAX taking out the Lugia V-Star. And Rahul Reddy, Regigigas taking out Raz on the Lugia V-Star. Azul, if he's up, he's the Lost Zone box against the Lugia V-Star. So we could see all of these players moving on through Lugia, especially if Pedro were able to do this as well on the big stage. Wouldn't that be something to see no Lugia in the top 4?
Oh, we have had confirmation. Azul has just beaten Yerko 2-0. So far, we've had 3 match results, and all 3 have seen Lugia lose. So there's going to be no Lugia mirror matches. Not in the top cut here. We had 4 Lugia in top cut. All of them were drawn against different decks. And so far, nobody tell Regan right now, Lugia is not having a lot of luck in our top 8.
Well, let's see if the prize cards have anything to say about it. Double Chorus Experiment at the top.
Oh, that's
Pedro.
not what you want to see.
The boss's orders for Regan, that is not too bad. Definitely can work with these prize cards here. I'm expecting to see a great game 3 from both of our competitors. We are underway here with Pedro starting things off.
Yeah. Oh, and it turns out apparently Yerko prized their Stoutland in their second game and conceded fairly quickly, unfortunately. But no, now this is the only game left in town. This is the final of the top 8 games left to be played, and we're starting off with Pedro using Flower Selecting on Comfy, getting that Radiant Greninja, and using Concealed Cards to draw a couple of extra cards.
Yep, looks like not nearly as explosive a hand as last time, but definitely one that you'd like to see. Gonna be able to draw into plenty cards here, and maybe not as many Flower Selectings, but a lot of great resources for the following turn.
Yeah, and sometimes that's all you can really do. You're not going to lose turn 1, so just get yourself set up, get some support Pokemon down, get yourself some resources, and then you can come back in the second turn and, you know, start getting your attackers and your energy and all of that. And, you know, just take turn 1 to start setting up quite nicely. Oh, yeah, we got 1 card in the Lost Zone there. That is the Ordinary Rod, if I see that correctly. So next turn, 1 flower selecting and a Chorus's Experiment. And we have then got Cramorant on board. Worth pointing out, of course, that that's not going to be easy with 2 of them in the prizes.
Well, just got a peek at Regan's hand. I saw a ton of energies. Thankfully did have that Luminion V that's going to help out in finding hopefully a Marnie to reset this hand, because you cannot lose those energies this early on. We did see Pedro using that Oranguru to help out with the top card, so won't be completely lost off this Marnie here. And we're going to need to see a lot from Regan now, as I don't know if he's going to get to play any cards into the discard pile before this Marnie.
No, and that is, it's not ideal when you're just essentially not doing much and going straight into Marnie. Now, we do have Aurora Energy discarding a choice belt.
I guess that counts.
That, I mean, technically counts at least, but that means you've got a... You really want to be playing a bunch of cards and then finishing with a Marnie.
Yes.
You know, Marnie's kind of the flourish at the end. Hey, look, I got really set up. Now I'll play a Marnie. Here, the Marnie's almost kind of punishing you for having a bad setup.
Oh, well, at least there was another Lugia V found, I believe, but this is not really a great hand.
I mean, you do get the Evolution Incense to grab the Archeops, I suppose?
Yeah, you get to read the win and discard that, but gonna need some help here off the top of the deck to at least stay relevant in the rest of this. The 1 Archeops in the discard is gonna be nice, but the prize exchange here could be brutal if Pedro finds the right chain of cards. It is a long shot, as he does only have the 1 card in the Lost Zone.
Yeah, it's gonna take quite a lot, and we know Chorus's Experiment. Oh, it's in hand, so there might be 2 prizes, but it's already 1 in hand. It's all good. Absolute minimum here. We should be seeing a Cramorant attack doing 110, which would be lovely, but unfortunately, there is, well, unfortunately for Pedro, it's unlikely to get the Raikou. Unfortunately for Regan, it is actually possible.
Yeah, we do see the Mirage Gate, Snorlax, Psychic Energy added to the hand. Those are all pretty solid cards to have here, as we could see all of those being relevant. Maybe on a turn 3. I don't expect to see it on this second turn here. Should very well just be that Cramorant.
Yeah, that is, you know, I've seen, I mean, you've seen it too. We've all seen players getting like the turn 2 Sableye dropping 12 damage counters. You've got 10 cards in the Lost Zone. But that is on those exceptional turns where everything goes perfectly. This is far more likely. We do see the Training Court hitting the Lost Zone, which is not usually what we're looking for. But we got a spare Comfey here, and we got a Cramorant already down. We got some support Pokemon drawing cards. I think Pedro will take this start.
Yeah, with the Ordinary Rod down and the Training Court, seeing those 3 different basic types of energy in the discard piles, kind of upsetting. You would love to have those resources, so had to be a great choice here if you're going to lose that card.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes you see a card go into the Lost Zone and you're like, oh, they must have gotten a really good card. Because, yeah, some of them you only drop when you absolutely have to. So we have now got 4 cards in the Lost Zone. That Cramorant is on board. You just need to get the Comfey out the active. The question is, how far can Pedro push it before we get there? There is a switch card in hand that would allow use of another Comfey, or just being able to put the Cramorant in the active and start attacking. I'm not seeing another pivot option, and it's always a bit risky, so might just have to be a switch card into a Cramorant hit for 110, which is not a bad way to end the game, or end the turn.
Yeah, there was, I guess, the reach there. Maybe if the Cramorant wasn't benched, there where you could go for the triple Comfey, but you would use all of your bench spaces getting to the 7 for the Mirage Gate, and then you don't have a Pokemon you really want to attack with here. So instead, going to just go ahead and lean into the Cramorant hit, spit innocently onto the Lugia V here, and go ahead and start setting up that Snorlax V. This is a great Pokemon as a cleanup hitter. We've seen the Zamazenta do it. Snorlax can as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We know we like Snorlax, we like Zamazenta. They're not the biggest Pokemon ever, but they are the kind of big hitters a lot of the time in this Lost Box deck. So we head on over to Regan then, and we're in a very similar position to game 1. Had a fairly slow turn 1, but we got a Lugia, but it's got a bunch of damage on. So the question is, can we see the Lugia V-Star?
Ooh.
And you see Regan there straight away getting that Raikou, has identified there's no Manaphy on Pedro's bench, and that Raikou can take a double prize turn this turn.
Yeah, that is fantastic. And Regan immediately seeing that, throws that down here. It's a great opportunity to go ahead and steal some early prizes in this game, leave a single prize Pokemon in the active space, and that's something that Pedro doesn't really deal well with. We've talked about the fact that he has all of those escape routes, but I believe it is just that one copy of Boss's Orders if he wants to stay ahead in the prize exchange and take the V knockouts.
Yeah, we do see the speed lightning energy coming down on the Raikou. It's a lightning energy, but you get to draw a couple of extra cards while you attach it, which is always quite nice. We do see a quick ball coming down here for just another Lugia V. It's not terribly important. There's already 2 on the field, so it might be fitting deck, or we might be just getting a spare out for later. I mean, honestly, at this stage, do we know how many Archeops are in the discard pile?
I believe it's just 1 so far, the one off the Read the Wind, but...
That's what I'm thinking, which...
Well, I'm sure we will be reminded shortly.
Oh, I'm willing to bet so. So then the question is, do you risk just going single Archeops, as we've seen some players do?
Does find it here, so does have the Evolution Incense and the Ultra Ball.
Oh, that's lovely. So it's not even a question here. We're going to see the double Archeops, and then we're going to see the double KO. The Cramorant's going to go down, and then able to KO one of those bench Comfey, or I believe Oranguru would be in range as well.
I feel like I can hear John Eng screaming in the crowd right now about how great that is to find. That is the perfect card here, as he's going to be able to get the full range, all of the energies available, and start to take some prize cards. And Regan has not been able to do that early on in the stages of this match, has always been working his way back. So being able to put some pressure on Pedro, definitely going to be a nice change of pace.
Yeah, won one of the 2 games where he was fighting back, so being able to actually go from the front, it's going to be a bit normal, it's going to be a bit different. It could be the difference here. Bearing in mind, as we've said, Regan is the last standing Lugia. If there's going to be a Lugia in top 4, if a Lugia is going to have any chance of winning this tournament, it's going to have to be Regan here. So we do see the 2 Archeops, and now we're going to see the Primal Turbo here going and grabbing up to 4 special energy. And yeah, 2 of them go straight onto that amazing rare Raikou. And Pedro at this stage is thinking, man, I wish I had that Manaphy on the board. But by the same token, you need all the bench spaces.
Yeah, I mean, these are the Pokemon that got you this far, so you can't complain at this stage. You already have 5 cards in the Lost Zone. You have an opportunity to start working on your strategy soon enough. And if you remove the Raikou from play, then you don't have to worry about Manaphy for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and that is what you're going to be aiming to do here. You're going to have to, essentially the Raikou is going to have its way of a couple of prizes. You just need to have a response straight away here.
Yep, going to target down that Oranguru. That is a key piece in this deck, as we've seen so often Pedro stacking the top card of his deck to help out against those potential Marnies. Maybe there'll be an opportunity later down the road for Regan to stick one of those and leave Pedro on a hand that isn't able to have some retaliation.
Absolutely. The Comfy here is able to get a Battle VIP pass in the Lost Zone. That is obviously a great target. And we are at a stage now where just, you know, we don't need much. That Chorus's Experiment would put the Mirage Gate onto the board here. That would absolutely activate it. I'm not seeing it in hand, though. We do see Luminion, and this is going to be important because, of course, we know 2 of them are prized. So, yeah, there's only 1 left in the deck. We played 1, 2 are in the prizes. So when it's that difficult to find, Luminion, it's got your back.
Yeah, it's a great friend to have here. Going to be able to grab that Chorus Experiment and help out. The only issue is, of course, that's a 2 prize Pokemon there, Ross, and I don't like that part.
No, I don't like that part at all. But this is one of those calculated risks we keep talking about. You don't want to bench Luminion. Not at all. You're giving your opponent an easy 2 prize option, and the whole point of your deck is to make your opponent go through single prize Pokemon. But then at the same token, if you whiff the Chorus's Experiment here, that is going to be a bigger detriment than just having that Luminion down. So you play the Luminion, you get your Chorus's Experiment, and there is honestly just an element here of just crossing your fingers that your opponent doesn't punish you for doing it.
We'll see if that ends up being the case here. Pedro looking at his giant hand that he has. Plenty of options here as he finally has 8 cards in the Lost Zone. Going to make quick use of that Mirage Gate here to help out. And now I'm curious, do we see the Luminion potentially as the beneficiary of these energies? It feels weird, but maybe you can remove that V Pokemon from play, take the knockout on the Raikou. The only issue is We have that scary thought of maybe Stoutland sneaking up and working on these Comfeys. I don't know what moves into the active position after this Luminion.
I mean, it's awkward. I want to say Snorlax. I want to say, oh, you go Snorlax. The problem is, if you put Snorlax active, then it gets KO'd by a Lugia and you've lost your good attacker.
Right.
But you don't want to put your Comfey in the line of fire, like you've just said, but then you don't want to give away your Radiant Greninja, because that's really good for drawing cards.
I think this is a very tough decision. This is a top 8 decision, and Pedro is going to have to make that here. We'll see if maybe there's another Pokemon in the hand that he feels more comfortable leaving in the active spot, but I guess it would be Radiant Greninja if you can't find another one that you like.
Yeah, and it feels really bad. You can't put the Comfey up because that is just asking Stoutland to take 2 prizes. My problem is if you put Snorlax up, you don't have much of an attacker. But what if you put Radiant Greninja up and Regan's able to play a Marnie while KOing that Radiant Greninja? Then you're just flower selecting, and it's, it is an uncomfortable choice no matter which way you slice it. None of these are the correct choices, and that is awkward. And similarly, I like using Luminion to KO the Raikou. I like getting Luminion off the board and getting rid of that 2-prize liability like we've said. But when we see this play with the Lugia decks, you know you can just keep getting the energy out with the Archeops, and there's no real downside here. Here, you've used those precious Mirage Gates to get your Luminion rolling, and you don't have infinite Mirage Gates, so it does look like we are getting the KO here, and it is a Comfey in the active, and if I'm Regan here, I am looking to try and punish with that Stoutland as soon as possible.
Yeah, a lot of work there to try to get the Lost Zone to the right spot, got the Luminion, and then made it out, put it right back into the deck there, and it's only for 1 prize. It felt like it should have been worth 3 prizes, honestly, with how much work was done there for Pedro. Sure enough, still down in the prize race, and Regan's going to try to find a solution here.
Absolutely. So we do see Archeops here using that Primal Turbo, getting a couple of special energy. I mean, we could just see a KO with the Luminion here. We could see a bit of a repeat. It would KO the Comfey quite nicely while taking that potential 2-prize liability off the board. And it does allow that's what's going to happen, because if you're just going to retreat it, you only need to put 1 energy on. Putting 2 energy on tells us we are going to see, well, more fish.
Hey, I like more fish. Fish are definitely a great resource to have in this matchup.
Double fish.
And it's the Marnie as well. And we talked about this with the Oranguru being knocked out after the Raikou. This is a huge turn where you could put your opponent in a really awkward spot. 10 cards going to go down to the bottom of the deck. Just seeing 4 now. He's going to lose a Comfey as well, and really needs to find some resources like that Raihan to help out and pull this hand back together.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot. You need something just to get back from this. And this is what Regan's really looking for. KO and the Comfey, and you're going down to 3 prizes at that stage. You're actually up by 2 prizes while trying to disrupt your opponent. And at that stage, the cheeky Stoutland play is absolutely still a potential here. But you can just smash with Lugia if you want to. Like a couple of Lugia attacks, you'll win the game.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we're going to see that Archeops using the Primal Turbo now. And we've seen this play from a lot of players before, especially when they're going to use a Marnie. You could just throw on some additional energies onto the Luminion V if you don't exactly know where you want to place them. But it looks like that Lugia V is going to hold on to them, and then we're probably going to see the energy attachment for the turn from Regan's hand now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to come down, and yeah, it's interesting to look at what's going to happen for the next few turns of this game, because they've both used Luminion to take a prize. But if I'm looking at this, I am liking Regan's setup. I want the other Lugia V-Star to evolve that one on the bench. That's going to be big in the next couple of turns. But because those Archeops can just keep bringing the energy out again and again and again, that means that I can just keep stringing these attackers. If I'm Pedro, I don't have infinite Mirage Gate. I've got kind of Snorlax, and that's about it. I mean, Regan is going to have to put something active after this Luminion, and it's a similarly awkward situation, because it's either the single prize Archeops that you're kind of using for energy acceleration, or it's a 2-prize Pokemon. Can you afford to lose one of the Archeops at this stage of the game? I think you probably can.
Yeah, I think you can, especially with the energy attachment that we saw to the Lugia V-Star. Already thinking ahead in that situation to have an answer potentially if you only have that single Archeops. And that is going to be just one prize card, of course, for Regan here. Both players making great use of their Luminion Vs, trying to avoid giving up these prize cards. And I do like seeing that Regan is going to focus on that Lugia V-Star. Says, if you want to take a knockout, you're going to have to use a V Pokemon. I am not walking into a Zamazenta or that Snorlax.
Absolutely here. So it does look like Pedro is going to put that Comfy active, of course. That flower selecting, a great way to start off your turn. Pedro is 2 prizes down here, only taken 1 to Regan's 3. So
that's not okay.
There was an audible groan from the crowd that we could hear from the desk here. That was, yeah, that was bad. You did not want that. Because those are the 2 cards that you want.
Why can't Radiant Greninja grab those? Can we take it back and try again?
Yeah, Radiant Greninja would have just grabbed both of them. And you've got to drop the Mirage Gate. But now, have you been tracking the Mirage Gate? How many have we got?
I think Regan knows what the card is because Mirage Gate was thrown away. There is only one other card that you want if you're tossing that, and sure enough, it is the Raikou V.
Now, I saw 2 in the discard there. There's 1 in the Lost Zone. I believe that does mean there is another Mirage Gate in the deck. I believe there's 1 remaining. I could be wrong about this.
And it's not the end of the world. There is the energy acceleration by way of the Raihan that you can focus on too. But it just doesn't feel great.
No, it really doesn't. I mean, seeing those, and that's the thing though, we've all had these turns of Comfey where, you know, you're looking at 2 amazing cards, like, yeah, they're the 2 cards I want. And the game's like, yeah, we'll now put 1 of them in the Lost Zone.
Make a choice.
But it's a downside. You know, these cards aren't all just going to be unmitigatedly good. There are going to be downsides. And one of the downsides here, and yes, you're stacking your Lost Zone, which is good for the deck, but there are still times where you have to Lost Zone something you don't want. We see there's 2 Battle VIP pass in the Lost Zone. That is the best case scenario. Mirage Gate here, pretty much the worst. But I think you said, you know, that the fact that the Mirage Gate went in the Lost Zone kind of told Regan that the card in hand had to be the Raikou, so that gives Regan information that they can react to.
Yeah, this is something that he certainly will be thinking about here as we move on in the final turns of this game, as we are getting pretty close to the closing point here. Under 6 minutes remaining. Regan with just 3 prize cards. Pedro with plenty of damage on that benched Lugia V-Star right now, trying to find a way to close out here.
Yeah, we are actually now starting to run impossibly short of time. We are down to about 5.5 minutes on the timer. We are in 75 minutes, but we've had, you know, we've had 2 full games. We're into our 3rd, and this is a real back and forth affair. So we could still be getting into tiebreakers here. It is just important to note that there will be actual tiebreakers in a game 3. There is going to be no such thing as a tie. If one player doesn't hit one of those win conditions, we are going to have to go to the tiebreakers.
Oh, Regan looking at his options with the single Primal Turbo. Has not had that issue for the majority of this match. Finally down to just that 1 there. Only needs 1 though, as it goes on to the Lugia V-Star.
Yeah, that Lugia V-Star's got all the energy it needs to attack here, and we've actually started building up the 1 on the bench as well. There is the boss's orders onto the Dominion. That is going to take a 2 prize KO, put Regan down to 1 prize remaining. And I think the crucial thing here is there are 2 attackers set up with 1 prize needing to be taken. And I think that is going to put Regan right on the verge of top 4 here. And yeah, we do see, you know, we finally see on the bench. Oh, it's Sky Seal Stone, but it might be a little bit too late. It's only going to be 3 prizes, but we are going to see the Roxanne coming down here. Is this too little, too late for Pedro? Remember, there is a 2nd Lugia V-Star on the bench. There is an Archeops which can accelerate energy to it. Regan needs 1 attack with 1, and that Lugia KOs anything on Pedro's side of the field. So sure, we got Roxanne putting Regan down to a very small 2-card hand here. Does Regan need anything in his hand at this stage?
Is there a world where you just draw into all of your energies and then can't Primal Turbo onto your Lugia V-Star? I'm trying to figure it out here. It's asking so much. Regan's not even going to look at the cards.
I don't think it matters. I think Regan has got the board set up here, so he's got the return KO, and there's nothing really Pedro can do about it. And this guy Seal Stone is kind of cute and is going to get free prizes. Pedro doesn't need... Well, Pedro needs 4 prizes. Looks like there's 4 prize money to Pedro here, not 5. So that means... But it's still not going to be enough.
Yep. Got that graphic updated there, and you're gonna need that additional one. That is just a little bit short here at this stage of the game.
Yeah, now taking out a VMAX and getting an extra prize, that would do it. There's no VMAX on Regan's side of the board, and I do think it's going to be a little bit too late for Pedro here. I don't think we are going to end up going a time into tiebreakers. Pedro needs to take 4 prizes, and there is a way on, you know, with what Pedro's doing here to potentially take 3, but then Regan's gonna have the return KO, and with the Archeops on the bench, you know, you need some way to turn off the ability, but turning off the ability of a non-rule box Pokemon, it's not an easy thing to do.
Oh, Pedro looking for every single card, and the last card is the Mirage Gate that he was potentially looking for there. That is not going to work out for him.
Yeah, it is unfortunately not quite meant to be, but like I say, even with the KO, it wasn't going to be enough, but Regan, it does look like, is booking his spot into the top 4 of the Oceania International Championships with a 2-1 win over the previous champion, Pedro Eugenio Torres.
The lone Lugia in the top 4 of the Oceania International Championships. It's going to be all on Regan Retzloff to do just that, but he's not alone in his testing group, as Rahul Reddy is also going to be joining him, along with Azul Garcia Carriego and Owen Kammerman, a fantastic star-studded top 4 that we have lined up here, and I can't wait to see who is going to end up crowned as our champion.
Well, it's interesting. We had 4 Lugia in the top 8, and they did not convert very well at all. Only one of them converted. But we had 4 US players in the top 8, and they converted very well indeed. Because our top 4 has actually got 3 US players, and, you know, Owen Kammerman defeated Grant Chen. That's the only US player that lost. Every one of our top 8 matches featured a US player, and they went 3-1 as a group. The US players have come to play at the Oceania International Championships.
I'm so proud of my boys. Yeah, that's right. It is great to see them showing off here. And I mean, these are players that we see every single tournament, all of the big stages, sure enough, showing off here once more. And it's great to see that we have some